You want to get the most out of it. You want to look phenomenally good, like Wolverine or Captain America or whatever, Thor, right? All the Marvel superheroes that are allegedly not on Primo. Yeah, fat chance. Vigorous Steve here. Let's continue with the battle of the steroids and compare Primobolan to Equipoise, which is certainly a fairer comparison compared to comparing Primobolan to Methenolone, purely from a accrual of new muscle tissue perspective. I mean, that's the main reason why we take these anabolic androgenic steroids. We want to build some muscle tissue, right? So we have to make fair comparisons. And I feel that, based on everything that I've seen and of research that I've done and used both compounds myself, I feel that Primobolan and Equipoise are interchangeable from a surface level perspective, when we compare the accrual of new muscle tissue and strength and cosmetic changes and all that good stuff, right? All the benefits that we want from steroids. But when we dive deeper into it and actually compare Primo to Equipoise, all things considering, Primobolan still wins. That's why I'm running Primobolan instead of Equipoise. But let's discuss all of that in this video. And before we do, and before we get into it, please like the video, leave a comment for the algorithm, and consider subscribing if you haven't already, because going forward, we're going to do a lot more battle of the steroids on this YouTube channel. And if you'd like to see a particular comparison, let me know down below in the comment section. You want to see Superdrol versus Anadrol? Put it down below and I'll consider it. And same with all the other drug comparisons we can do. I mean, they have to make sense, right? Trenbolone and Nandrolone we can compare because they're both progestogenic 19-nors. But comparing Turinabol to Halotestin, it's not really a fair comparison, right? So it has to make sense. Let me know down below in the comment section and I'll get that battle of the steroids started. And let's start off this video with a couple quick facts about Primobolan and Equipoise. And if you're not interested in the history, feel free to use the timestamps and skip ahead to the use and the effects and the side effects part of this video. Primobolan, the chemical name is Methenolone, available as acetate tablets and enanthate injections. Initially introduced in 1962 by Squibb, discontinued in the 1990s in the United States and Europe, but it's still available as a pharmaceutical grade product in Spain and Turkey. In 1990s, after Squibb discontinued their Nibal and Nibal Depot, Schering acquired the license. They started producing Primobolan S and Primobolan Depot products. In 2006, Schering merged with Bayer, and then Bayer rebranded Primobolan into Rimobolan sometime around 2014. Methenolone acetate and enanthate used to be prescribed in medical treatments of muscle wasting diseases, osteoporosis, sarcopenia, and to counter the treatments of prolonged corticosteroids use. Nowadays, in Turkey and Spain, Primobolan is only prescribed to treat anemia due to bone marrow failure. So luckily for us, Primobolan is still available as a pharmaceutical grade product in the form of Rimobolan Depot produced by Bayer. You can't say the same for Equipoise, although it's still available as a veterinary medication. Let's continue with Equipoise. Chemical name is Boldenone. It's available as an undeslinate ester in an injectable product. There's no known tablet formulations of Boldenone, albeit that the anabol is chemically very similar to Boldenone. Both were developed by Ciba. Boldenone undeslinate, branded as Primobolan, was only used from the late 1960s to the early 1970s in the United States, after which it got discontinued. And then somewhere in the 1970s, Squibb acquired the license for Boldenone undeslinate from Ciba. Primobolan was discontinued, and Squibb produced their own Equipoise. So that's the brand name that we all come to know and love, which is a veterinary medication produced for horses. Now, the prescription for horses, when horses are debilitated, they would recommend 0.5 milligram per 1 pound to recover this horse from a debilitating state. So an average horse, especially race horses, are around 1,000 pounds from what I was able to piece together on Google. So that means a 1,000-pound horse would get administered 500 milligrams of Boldenone every couple of weeks. Not every week, not twice a week. 500 milligrams every couple of weeks. So that's a much lower dose than what bodybuilders generally tend to use. So keep that in mind, guys. The prescription for Boldenone for debilitated horses is 0.5 milligram per 1 pound, and a 1,000-pound horse would get administered 500 milligrams of Boldenone. Now, Squib produces Boldenone and desalinate in 50 milligrams per 1 ml. So that means a 1,000-pound horse getting administered 500 milligrams Boldenone would get a 10 milliliter shot once every couple of weeks. So all of this you have to keep in mind. These concentrations of Squib Equipoise are reasonably low, generally not what we use in bodybuilding. Most underground labs would produce Boldenone and desalinate branded as Equipoise in 250 or 300 milligrams per 1 ml because Boldenone and desalinate is quite lipophilic. So it's easy to suspend in a carrier oil, allowing for a reasonably high concentration. I would personally not purchase a higher concentration than 300 milligrams per 1 ml because that would indicate that additional solvents are used like ethyl oleate or propylene glycol or whatever else they use to keep that in suspension. 250 to 300 milligrams per 1 milliliter is the Boldenone and desalinate you are looking for. And any higher than that, I would avoid altogether. Now, for the short duration of time that perennial Boldenone and desalinate was medically used in humans, it was also prescribed in the treatments of muscle wasting diseases, sarcopenia, and osteoporosis. I believe that after doing some more clinical research, which we'll get into a little bit later in this video, it was completely discontinued for human treatments. And then, of course, Squib acquired a license and started producing Boldenone and desalinate branded as Equipoise for veterinary use. Now, for horses, again, it's prescribed or used in debilitated or weakened horses when an improvement in weight, hair coat, or general physical condition is desired. Now, debilitation or weakening of the horse often comes following disease or overwork or overexertion. I mean, horses are still used for races or for some sort of manual labor. So in those cases, Equipoise is administered for a certain period of time to get these horses out of a debilitated state and strengthen them into a good state of health. All right, we got the medical history out of the way. I'm sure you use the timestamps to skip ahead. There's no shame in that. But help your boy out. Hit the like and the notification bell button. My Baratna. Okay, let's get into it. Primobolan versus Equipoise. The medical ester of Primobolan or Primobolan depot is Methenolone enanthate, which yields 72.9% actual Methenolone. So the active pharmaceutical ingredient is only 72.9%. That means 100 milligrams per 1 milliliter of Primobolan depot yields 72.9 milligrams actual Methenolone. Now, with Boldenone and desalinate, Equipoise, even though the ester weight is a little bit higher, so you get less actual Boldenone, the concentration per milliliter is certainly a lot higher. So you get way more milligrams per single administration of 1 milliliter. This is something we have to keep in mind if you want to keep the injection volume down. Boldenone and desalinate yields 63.3% actual Boldenone, so the active pharmaceutical ingredient is only 63.3%, and at a concentration of 300 milligrams per 1 milliliter, you get 189.9 milligrams Boldenone. Now, if you go with veterinary grades, 50 milligrams per 1 milliliter, which is only 31.7 milligrams per 1 milliliter. And considering the injection volume you would have to do to get any proper amount of Boldenone in your system, or Boldenone and desalinate, I would already consider veterinary grade Squib Equipoise to not be worth it, even though it is a pharmaceutical, albeit for horses or camels. For human use, probably incredibly cumbersome. So if you want to go with Equipoise or Boldenone and desalinate, you probably have to source that on the underground lab scene, risking the potential for underdosing, sterility issues, contaminants with heavy metals, etc., 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 etc. And at least Primobolan depot is available as a pharmaceutical, albeit on the gray market as well and commonly counterfeited too. So, right, there's always a little bit of caution and risk involved when purchasing and acquiring these kinds of products wherever. The molecular weight of Methenolone is 302.458 Daltons. And boldenone has a much lower molecular weight, even lower than testosterone, of 286.415 Daltons. That means that boldenone is 5.3% lighter than methenolone and 0.7% lighter than testosterone, with a molecular weight of 288.431 Daltons. Now, the molar mass is comparable to the molecular weight from a numerical perspective. Again, the molar mass is based on the Avogadro's constant, which contains 6.0221476 times 10 to the power 23 molecules. Now, this equation, where we want to compare methenolone directly to boldenone, we want to get an equal amount of molecules, an equal amount of androgen receptor binding potential, right? I mean, disregarding the relative binding affinity for the androgen receptor, because unfortunately for boldenone, the relative binding affinity of boldenone to the androgen receptor compared to testosterone is known, but that's not the case for methenolone. So unfortunately, we can't make a really direct comparison there, but we can compare fair dosages, right? So in both scenarios, we get an equal amount of molecules. So we use 1,000th of a mole, a mistake I made and already rectified with another video in the Masterone versus Primobolan comparison. So we'll take 1,000th of a mole, being 602.2 quintillion molecules of methenolone or boldenone. That means if we extrapolate with the molecular weight, accounting for the ester weight, which is of course also present in the Primobolan or Equipoise formulations, to get the same amount of molecules based on 1,000th of a mole using the Avogadro's constant, we would need 414.89 milligrams of Primobolan, and compare that directly head-on to 452.47 milligrams Equipoise. Both dosages would yield exactly 602.2 quintillion molecules. Keep that in mind. The dosages are very comparable on a milligram perspective, so that's about a 9.1% difference in dosage, right? Equipoise dose is 9.1% higher than the Primobolan dose, but both dosages would yield the exact same amount of molecules. So we can make a direct comparison this way. So going forward, let's round the numbers a little bit. 415 milligrams Primobolan would require an injection volume of a little bit over 4 milliliters, but 453 milligrams Equipoise would only need 1.5 milliliters of an injection volume. So when we compare the injection volumes to get the same amount of molecules and potential for androgen receptor binding, Equipoise wins. 1 point for Equipoise. Now the concentration, of course, determines that. And when we compare the price, and just going by street value, just a quick market analysis, you would spend about 40 to maybe even 45 United States dollars on 450 milligrams Primobolan. And when you compare that to the cost of 453 milligrams Equipoise, you're only spending $7.50. That's United States dollars, $7.50. That's a huge difference. You're paying 1/6 the price for boldenone for the same amount of molecules. 1/6 the price. Another point for boldenone. So now we're 2 for 0. Let's compare the anabolic to androgenic ratings. Primobolan has an anabolic rating of 88 and an androgenic rating of 44 to 57, while Equipoise has an anabolic rating of 50 and an androgenic rating of 100. So to compare, testosterone is an anabolic to androgenic rating of 100 to 100, albeit that I don't think that was established on testosterone only. That was probably established on testosterone aromatizing into estradiol and dihydrotestosterone, which the Hirschberg's assays to determine the anabolic and androgenic ratings in rats, right? The ventral prostate and the levator ani muscles in male rats, that was determined on exogenous testosterone, not accounting for the conversion of testosterone to dihydrotestosterone, which could potentially cascade and alter the effects of testosterone regarding the prostate and the levator ani muscle. So either way, it's scientific evidence, so we can use it as a comparison. At one point, I'll make a separate video about it. So we see that the anabolic rating of Primobolan is a little bit higher compared to Boldenone, and the androgenic rating is a little bit lower than Boldenone. So you would say, based on this anabolic to androgenic rating, that Primobolan is superior. So that's 1 point for Primobolan, but we're still behind Boldenone with 2 points. Maybe we can change that going forward. Let's compare the relative binding affinities. Unfortunately, those are not very well documented in both cases. So we know that the relative binding affinity of Primobolan to the sex hormone binding globulin compared to dihydrotestosterone is only 3. Dihydrotestosterone has a relative binding affinity of 100 to the sex hormone binding globulin, and testosterone has a relative binding affinity of 19 to 82 to the sex hormone binding globulin. So Primobolan has a much lower binding affinity for the sex hormone binding globulin, as I can tell from the scientific evidence. Unfortunately for Boldenone, that's not known, so we can't make a direct comparison, and we can't make a direct comparison of the relative binding affinity to the androgen receptor, because the relative binding affinity of Primobolan to the androgen receptor is also not known. But Boldenone has a relative binding affinity for the androgen receptor compared to testosterone of 50 to 75. Now, the binding affinities to the estrogen alpha receptors for both compounds are unknown, same for the progesterone receptor, the glucocorticoid receptor, mineralocorticoid receptors, and the relative binding affinity to the aromatase enzymes, and how much of testosterone they can displace or take the place of testosterone in the aromatase or the 5-alpha reductase enzymes. That's also unknown. But we do know that that's the case based on the blood work results I've seen, and many of you guys have seen, when combining testosterone with either Primobolan or Equipoise. You see a reduction in estradiol concentrations. And in some cases, you might even see a reduction in dihydrotestosterone concentrations, where Primobolan or Equipoise takes the place of testosterone in the aromatase enzyme and in the 5-alpha reductase enzymes, reducing the conversion of testosterone into estradiol as well as dihydrotestosterone. Now, the funny thing is here is that, of course, Primobolan is dihydrotestosterone derivative, so you might still get hair loss, even though you're reducing the conversion of testosterone into dihydrotestosterone. And Boldenone converts into dihydroboldenone and other metabolites which have an even more overlapping and potent effect in the reduction of testosterone into estradiol, particularly 1-AD, ATD, and ADD. I'll put the chemical names on screen so you guys know what these abbreviations stand for. Now, these 3 metabolites, including dihydroboldenone, all potentiate moderate to noticeable anti-estrogenic effects by inhibiting the conversion of testosterone into estradiol. I looked into all of the metabolites of Primobolan and all of the metabolites of Equipoise, and the large majority of them, they don't really fulfill a physiological function. But for dihydroboldenone, A1-AD, ATD, and ADD, it's now known that these potentiate some anti-estrogenic effects on top of Boldenone itself, right? And dihydroboldenone potentiates some anabolism as well, which is, I believe, not the case for 1-AD, ATD, and ADD. And all the metabolites of Primobolan, I looked through all of them. No clinical evidence suggesting that they have anti-estrogenic or anabolic effects or any other beneficial effects regarding our bodybuilding journey at all. So I would say that's an extra point for Boldenone, considering that the metabolites have some overlapping effects which might be beneficial and desired from a bodybuilding perspective. Now, we'll have to deduct a couple points based on the side effects. And this is purely from anecdotal evidence, what I've seen as a bodybuilding coach for, well, almost 10 years with myself and with clients. When we compare acne, I would say that Primobolan is worse. So now we're at 0 to 3. Gyno, both I would say neither. So we're keeping that the same. Hair loss, I would say Primo. So now we're -1 on the Primo. Mental changes, I would say irritability with Primo and anxiety or social anxiety with Boldenone. Now, the irritability on Primobolan is manageable. And keep in mind, like in both cases, it's a little bit difficult to determine what's actually going on, because Primobolan is generally a contest prep or cutting phase compound, and Boldenone is generally a off-season compound. So maybe the irritability on Primobolan also comes from being in a caloric restrictive state for prolonged periods of time, right? You're using Primobolan, it's expensive. You want to get the most out of it. You want to look phenomenally good like Wolverine or Captain America or whatever, Thor, right? All the Marvel superheroes that are allegedly not on Primo. Yeah. Fat chance. So, so maybe that's making you irritable also, right? I'm running Primobolan right now, albeit at a pretty low dose, but I'm not really irritable. But, well, using some Cmax and it helps to take the edge off, I believe. And Boldenone, maybe social anxiety occurs because your hematocrit is a little bit higher, your body fat is a little bit higher, your blood volume is higher, your body weight is higher. And then, of course, people are looking at you and like, man, this tank just walking around the grocery store, and then you feel all the heads just slowly start turning wherever you go. That leads to some social anxiety as well. So that's outside factors that contributes to the side effects that you might experience on Boldenone. Some people notice that 2,000 milligrams of GABA before bed helps to alleviate this sense of anxiety. Again, Boldenone does modulate the GABAergic system of the brain, so it might be advised to run a little bit of GABA if you're interested in running Boldenone after watching this video. Personally, I'm not anymore, but hey, maybe one of you out there would still consider to run Equipoise going forward. So, mental changes, side effects, I would say it's equal in that sense, manageable in both cases. And again, when you run Primobolan during the off-season, you might get some anxiety for the outside factors as well. And when you run Boldenone during a cutting phase, you might get some irritability as well. So, we're still -1 versus 3. Raises in hematocrit, I would say equal. Diet is contributing, other erythropoietic compounds are contributing. So if you use Primo at a reasonably higher dosages during cutting phase to account for muscle loss in a caloric deficit, I would say hematocrit would still go up. And it's same during the off-season when you're using Boldenone and you're eating a ton of red meat and supplementing B100 complexes left and right and injectable vitamins and potentially get some sleep apnea. Now you start snoring at night, your hematocrit comes up from that as well. I would say in both cases, the raises in hematocrit are pretty equal, considering all of the outside factors which contribute to red blood cell production and the potential for increase in hematocrit also. Blood pressure. I would say Boldenone. Boldenone increases blood pressure more. During a contest prep, I've seen increases in blood pressure, right, with the use or without the use of blood pressure medications or methods to keep your blood pressure in range. I would say, from my personal experience, what I've seen with clients and anecdotal evidence talking to bodybuilders worldwide, Boldenone is worse on your blood pressure compared to Primo. And I don't think that Primobolan, for the large majority of people that run pharmaceutical grade, has ever been associated with blood pressure issues. So 1 point down for Primobolan, number -1 for 2. I know it's a horrible scoring system, but we're going to have to do it this way on the fly. Reduction in serum estradiol concentrations. I would say Boldenone lowers estradiol more, and depending on your desires, right? If you want your estradiol high, you might have to change your ratio of testosterone to Boldenone during the off-season, right? And then as your body fat levels come down, you might even need to use more testosterone compared to Boldenone because aromatization occurs in the body fat. And as your body fat comes down, less potential for aromatization. And the Boldenone and the dihydroboldenone and the 1-AD and the ATD and the ADD and all these metabolites that inhibit estrogen synthesis or aromatization of testosterone in the body fat now all compound to the point you have, single digit or undetectable estradiol, right? So I feel that with Boldenone use, you have to manage your estradiol a little bit better unless you're in the deep off season and you're chunky. And your dose of test is pretty high, then right, you might need to increase the dose of Boldenone to suppress that actively. So from everything that I've seen, I would say that the reduction in serum estradiol is more pronounced with Boldenone for an equal dose, right? We're comparing equal dosages here and try to compare it in equal scenarios regarding a contest prep or an off-season phase the best way we can, right? A lot of variables to consider. Worsening of lipids, I would say Primobolan is worse on your lipids because it's a dihydrotestosterone derivatives. Again, same dosages, just from what I've seen on my blood work and with clients, reduction in sexual binding globulin, I would say Primobolan is worse. Also, both of these are easy to manage with, not too frequent injections, allowing for a little bit of aromatization of testosterone into estradiol. Again, estradiol contributes to favorable lipid levels, to favorable sexual binding globulin concentrations. And, well, let's be honest, Primobolan during a cutting phase, right, when your body fat levels are down, will also suppress estradiol. But I feel that Primobolan brings the HDL down a little bit more, the LDL up a little bit more, and the sexual binding globulin down a little bit more also, compared to an equal dose of Boldenone in both cases. Vascularity, Boldenone wins, and now I forgot count, but I think that Boldenone overall is ahead. Vascularity, I would say Boldenone is superior over Primobolan, could be due to the increase in blood pressure or the increase in hematocrit. And again, Boldenone is an off-season compound in most cases, so it's normal to lose a little bit of vascularity during a cutting phase. Cosmetic changes. For this dose of Primobolan, I would say you be denser and harder on Primobolan at 415 milligrams per week. And on Boldenone, I would say you're rounder and fuller, right? More vascular on 453 milligrams Equipoise per week. So a little bit of a different cosmetic appeal. Personally, I like denser and harder, more muscle maturity, more of a granite look, more solid look, compared to this rounder and fuller look of Boldenone. Because personally, for me, if I'm rounder and fuller, I feel a little bit uncomfortable and I start walking around like this, floaty imaginary lat syndrome, even though I do have lats. 4 days, mind you. I personally prefer that harder and denser look over the rounder and fuller look. But if you prefer rounder and fuller, you have to go with Boldenone. So both of these compounds have their unique cosmetic characteristics. And then the accrual of muscle tissue, 415 milligrams Primobolan versus 453 milligrams Boldenone, I would say is equal. Equal in both cases during cutting phase or off-season phase. If you run both compounds at these dosages, the caloric intake is the same, the micronutrient intake is the same, the training intensity is the same, the ancillary drugs are the same, or other performance-enhancing drugs are the same, right? If you use insulin and growth hormone or whatever else in both scenarios, I would say the accrual of muscle tissue is exactly the same. Now, based on the point system, which I already lost count, I would say that the winner is Boldenone, right? Comparing the price and the overall effects and the accrual of muscle tissue, everything considering the injection volume, everything considering up until this point, Boldenone wins. But when you start looking into the clinical literature, Boldenone loses. Terribly. Boldenone has been associated with kidney damage based on rabbit studies. Boldenone has been associated with disrupted immune system functioning. That's in human studies. Boldenone lowers thyroid function, also human studies. And there's many other animal studies where shows that Boldenone is a little bit toxic, a little bit too toxic for my liking. Now, besides the anxiety and the mental effects that I personally don't want to deal with anymore, right? I mean, personally, I'm making a trade-off to side effects to gains. The side effects that I got from Boldenone, the increase in blood pressure, the social anxiety or the anxiety in general, and then knowing that it's correlated to kidney damage and disrupts the immune system and functioning, which during these times are definitely not desired. All the points that Boldenone got previously, I forego for the sake of Primobolan, which actually boosts the immune system. Now, again, this has been studied in cases of an impaired immune system, but during these times when immune system might be impaired, right, at the touch of somebody else, I would prefer to run Primobolan. And Primobolan, even though it's expensive, it's available as a pharmaceutical grade, which I know I make this case for pharmaceutical grade compounds all the time, but still, getting an infection is not very pleasant. Or injecting yourself with heavy metals will build up over time, and then you need to do extensive EDTA chelation therapy just to get those metals out of your body. Right? That's not something you're risking with pharmaceutical grade because those have all bin scrupulously tested for the highest purity, highest sterility, get accurately dosed, and the active pharmaceutical ingredients actually is labeled. So even though on paper, making this simple comparison, Boldenone looks appealing, especially because it's cheap and the side effects are generally tolerable, all things considering, especially if you're thinking long term, Primobolan wins hands down, in my opinion. In my opinion. Even though maybe the numbers are against me, when you look at the scientific evidence, the clinical data, the fact that Primobolan is still medically used, albeit in only 2 countries, Primobolan wins. That's why I'm running Primobolan and not Boldenone. I hope this helps, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, let me know down below which steroid battle you would like to see next. Hit me up in the comment section. I will make a tally and go with the most popular comparison going forward. We'll try to do at least 1 a week or maybe 2 a week if it doesn't take too much time to prepare. Again, it takes a lot of preparation to make these videos, so if you haven't liked, now's a good time to do so. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're looking for the most comprehensive guides to bodybuilding pharmacology, you can find the ebooks on my website, vigorsteve.com/shop. Personalized advice always available through consultations. You can find the rates in the consultations section. Follow me on Instagram @VigorousSteve. Primobolan, front double bicep for the Vigorous crew. You guys know what to do. Much appreciated, much love. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next Battle of the Steroids video.